Chapter 51. Rendezvous. "What happens if the police are waiting for us?" asked Miriam. Looking down from clear skies at the menacing smog bank shrouding Rome's Leonardo da Vinci airport, she was reminded of the perils facing the two fugitives as soon as they landed. Tel Aviv could have called by now. "Relax," Ari admonished, putting a protective arm around her. "If we look nervous, they might take us for drug smugglers. Have a dog sniffing our bags and find that kosher sausage," he added with a laugh. "I'll just hang on to your arm and look like I'm in love. How's that?" "Great. Just try to make it convincing." "Ari, I'm serious. Suppose the Mossad is down there waiting for this flight." "A month ago, my primary resource would have been my martial arts expertise, quick wits, and whatever," confessed Ari. "But now we're in God's hands. If we're arrested, well, we'll trust him to work it out. But I don't think the Mossad has a clue where to look, and they can't watch every arriving flight in every airport in the world. David's planned this thing too well." Indeed, there was no sign of either the police or the Mossad when they entered the terminal. "Aren't we in transit?" asked Miriam with concern. "Why are we heading for baggage and customs?" "You and I are continuing on to Frankfurt and Chicago," Ari reminded her in a low voice. "But Igal and Ernie Yar are stopping over in Rome. Forever. We become someone else here, remember?" The records would show that Igal and Ernie Yar picked up their suitcases at the baggage claim and were cleared through customs. "You didn't fill in your address in Rome," observed the rather officious middle-aged woman whom they found themselves facing in passport control. "We thought we might rent a car," replied Ari casually. "Head up to Florence and Venice first, maybe Switzerland, the Italian lakes, then back to Rome later." "Better get reservations right away," suggested the matron as she stamped their passports after verifying their pictures. "Everything's crowded this time of year." "Thanks, we probably should," said Igal. Following the markers to ground transportation, Igal and Ernie exited the terminal, approached a taxi, seemed to remember they'd forgotten something, and re-entered by another door. "So much for that charade," said Ari, looking at his watch. "We've got almost 3 hours to wander through the duty-free shops, relax, change, and destroy everything belonging to Igal and Ernie. We're Yitzhak and Deborah Vanunu now, until we get to Frankfurt." Seating themselves in an isolated corner of the main terminal, Ari and Miriam familiarized themselves with their new identities. Addressing one another by their new names, they rehearsed the brief written history of Yitzhak and Deborah as to date and place of birth and other general information that was included with the passports, driver's licenses, and credit cards. These were all found neatly arranged in the packet marked number 2, when Ari took it from the false bottom in the briefcase. While occupied with this transformation, Miriam tore up the receipts for their Alitalia tickets and bent and twisted Igal and Ernie's credit cards until each was in 4 pieces. With a razor blade provided for that purpose, Ari shredded the passports and driver's licenses they were abandoning. Then, while he deposited the fragments in 3 different trash containers, Miriam took the plastic bag containing everything involved in the disguises they'd worn, walked to a far section of the terminal, and scattered the contents of the plastic bag among 3 trash containers there. The half-hour rental of shower cubicles provided the privacy for their second change of identity. Like those being abandoned, their new disguises, prepared by a Mossad specialist, were minimal yet transformed their appearances remarkably. Those provided through Don Jordan by an FBI makeup expert for the last 2 legs of their journey would prove to be equally creative. It was a grueling trip, with 2 otherwise unnecessary stops on the way to Chicago and yet another flight from there. David and Jordan, however, had wanted to be certain that their trail couldn't be followed. It was better to go to some extra trouble and be safe. That the Mossad, FBI, and CIA would mount an intensive worldwide search for them was beyond question. "This is like a dream," whispered Miriam, putting her head on Ari's shoulder as the jet lifted off on its way to Frankfurt's International Airport. "I still can't believe it's happening." "You can't. Imagine how I feel, after a lifetime of demons playing their games with my mind. That psychiatric ward was just the climax. It's like waking up from a nightmare. I don't recognize myself. I really am a new person." Miriam was silent for a few moments. At last she sat upright and half turned in her seat to look squarely at Ari. "Does it bother you at all that we're outlaws now? Fugitives with false identities that we'll have to keep up, maybe for the rest of our lives?" "It bothers you, doesn't it?" She nodded. "It seems so dishonest." "I'm not happy about it, but what other choice was there? I had to get out of Israel, and it's the only way for us to be together. You know that." "Yes, I know, but I pray God we don't have to hide from the police forever. How can we raise a family?" "Here comes the bride," he intoned rather loudly. "Hush!" exclaimed Miriam. "You're embarrassing me." Ari smiled contentedly. "I don't know how it's going to be arranged, but I'm insisting on wedding bells as soon as we get where we're going, wherever that is." "I thought we were going to Denver." "That's right, but I think we go on by car. Somewhere in the mountains, maybe." "They didn't tell us?" Miriam's voice betrayed her fear of the unknown. "What do we do?" "Relax, love. They've brought us this far. They won't abandon us now." After another pause in the conversation, Miriam said, "Speaking of starting a family, what about your son?" "You heard me give David all the details," said Ari wistfully. "He'll try to find him and see what can be done. His foster parents are real Christians. When they hear that I'm a believer, I'll just have to trust God for all that," he finished with a sigh. Again, a change of disguises, destruction and disposal of past identifying documents, and substitution of airlines. It was all accomplished smoothly at Frankfurt's International Airport, and then once more at Chicago's O'Hare. "I'm so tired and confused at this point," commented Miriam after they were safely aboard their United Airlines flight from Chicago to Denver, "that if someone asked my name, there's no telling what I might say. I don't know who I am anymore." "We're naturalized citizens now," returned Ari with a yawn. "That means we've got lots of rights. Just tell them you're taking the Fifth Amendment." "You still have to give your name, silly." She looked at him and couldn't believe her eyes. He had dropped off to sleep. It was a weary pair, now alias Marty and Sarah Berg, that found themselves at last, more than 30 hours after leaving Tel Aviv, lugging their carry-ons up the jetway into Denver's Stapleton International Airport. "We made it," exclaimed Miriam under her breath as they came out into the terminal and turned doggedly toward the baggage carousels to retrieve their suitcases. "I hope it's not a long drive on top of all this." "Whatever, it will be worth it to finally get to a safe place and stop running." They had walked scarcely 50 feet from their arrival gate when a tall, broad-shouldered man seemed to appear from nowhere at Ari's side. His deep voice quietly intoned the dread words, "Ari Thalberg and Miriam Zera, you're under arrest." Miriam stiffened, gasped, and clutched Ari's instantly tense arm more tightly. "Keep walking and act natural," the voice continued. Miriam felt Ari relax. With an audible sigh of relief, he whispered, "We're okay. It's the code phrase that identifies our contact." Why didn't you tell me?" "I forgot. Sorry." "When you exit with your baggage," continued the low voice beside them, speaking rapidly, "you'll find a new, dark gray four-door Buick Century just outside. License number MGJ148. The keys in packet 4 will fit. A map with instructions is in the glove compartment." With those welcome words, the man was gone. They found the car without incident. It was parked at the curb about 100 feet from where they exited the baggage area. Just as the voice beside them had promised, the dark gray sedan was brand new, and the keys in packet 4, which Ari had wondered about, did indeed fit. "Map? Instructions? It's all here," said Miriam happily, having opened the glove compartment while Ari started the engine. "And there's a key to a house on Clover Lane in Boulder. Doesn't look too far. Less than 2 hours, I'd think." "You're going to have to keep me awake," warned Ari, peering intently into the rearview mirror as he pulled slowly out into the traffic. "Looks good. No one's following. Which way do I go?" Just follow the traffic around, then straight ahead until you're outside the airport. Take the first right at the main intersection. That's going to be Quebec Street. Stay on that to I-70 going west, and I'll guide you from there onto the Denver-Boulder Turnpike. That's Highway 36. It was a crystal clear, sunny afternoon, with none of the smog that increasingly plagued the Denver area. The visibility was almost unlimited. Once away from the city and on the turnpike, the view opened up to the west. "Get your nose out of the map and take a look at those snow-capped peaks straight ahead," exclaimed Ari. "That could be the French or Swiss Alps, or maybe southern Germany. Magnificent! Is that where we're heading?" "It is beautiful," responded Miriam, looking up from the map. "Nothing like this in Israel." "No, we're not going up into the mountains. Boulder seems to lie just this side of the base of the Rockies. That's what they're called. It's not as far as I thought. Another 40 minutes, maybe." "There's the number on the mailbox," exclaimed Miriam with suppressed excitement, when at last Ari had turned the car onto Clover Lane and they were driving slowly along the semi-rural street. The houses were on large lots and surrounded by open fields. The view, looking down upon the city of Boulder a few miles in the distance, with the Rockies towering above, was magnificent. The dashboard clock indicated a few minutes past 4:30. "That's an automatic door opener," said Miriam as Ari pulled into the driveway and the car rolled toward the two-car garage that was attached to the beautifully landscaped, rambling ranch-style house that spread out to the right. She pointed to the device clipped to the visor over his head. "There, push the button." "There's a car in there," muttered Ari in surprise as the garage door slowly opened. "What does that mean?" "Maybe there's a car for each of us," suggested Miriam. "I don't think so. Somebody's here. I don't like the looks of this. The instructions say the house isn't occupied." He backed the car away from the garage toward the street. "Wouldn't that be something if we've come all this way?" "Now you're the one who's paranoid," suggested Miriam. "Maybe it's an extra car left by the owners. The house must belong to somebody." "You stay here," cautioned Ari. "I'll go check it out." Cautiously, Ari went up the walk that led from the driveway and climbed the steps onto the broad covered porch. He walked noiselessly past a large window, apparently of the living room, to reach the front door on the other side. The drapes were drawn, preventing him from seeing inside. Silently, he put the key into the lock and turned it. The door was wrenched open from within, and in the ensuing confusion, Ari was aware of strong arms gripping his shoulders and of two voices, both vaguely familiar, shouting meaningless phrases. Was it, after all, to end like this in bitter failure? "Ari, man, it's me, Ken Inman." "You're here! Oh, hallelujah!" exclaimed another voice. It was Carla. Reeling with the emotional impact, Ari gave way to the hugs and exclamations of joy. "Is this your house?" he asked. "I thought you lived in California, near Stanford University." "We do," explained Ken. "We're just the welcoming committee." "Where's Miriam?" demanded Carla. "In the car," returned Ari happily. "We saw your car in the garage, and I was a bit concerned. Am I glad to see you?" "Well, we can't leave her out there." Carla was already out the door. "What a wonderful surprise!" exclaimed Ari. "I hoped we'd somehow get to see you and Carla, but I had no idea it would be so soon." "You can't imagine how we've been looking forward to this. We wouldn't have missed it for anything. From what we've heard, it's a miracle you made it after what you've been through. Anyway, God has answered our prayers." Carla burst through the door with Miriam in tow. "Miriam, this is my husband, Ken." Wiping tears of joy from her eyes, Miriam looked dazed. "I'm having trouble believing this is really happening." She clung to Ari. "Darling, we made it." "You two must be absolutely wiped out," said Ken sympathetically. "How'd it go?" "Perfect," replied Ari gratefully. "A smooth operation all the way. And the car, this house, who set that up? Your friend Jordan?" Ken nodded. "Some wealthy Christian is covering the rent on both of them, and any other expenses, as long as necessary. And even he doesn't know where this house is located. Jordan did a fabulous job. I sure hope we can thank him personally someday." "You will. He plans to be here for the wedding." Ari gave Miriam another hug. Did you hear that, darling? There's going to be a wedding. I wonder whose it could be. Okay, practical matters, interrupted Carla. While you men bring in the suitcases, I'll show Miriam her room and the rest of the house. We want to hear all about everything. Tomorrow, after you've had a good night's rest, said Ken, as together they went outside and headed for the car. It's so incredible to be here. As he spoke, Ari was quickly searching the neighborhood with practiced eyes. In spite of his euphoria, his years of experience wouldn't let him forget security concerns. You sure you weren't followed here? He asked Ken. Absolutely. Some of Jordan's men escorted us for the first 100 miles to make sure no one was on our tail, and they were satisfied. Nobody's been watching us since the Senate gave its verdict 2 weeks ago. I never heard about that. They've branded us both as liars, but won't prosecute us. They're afraid of what we'd say in open court. But with the way the powers that be fooled the media, and the way it's been reported, we've been thoroughly discredited. The enemy doesn't think we're a threat anymore. Of course, they would have had us under surveillance the moment it was known you were missing, added Ken. That's why Jordan told us to come over here 2 days ago. And we're not going to show ourselves anywhere until we're ready to go home. Then Jordan's men will cover us again. I can hardly wait to hear Carla's story, and yours too. I understand you confronted Del Sasso a few times and shut down his demonic powers. I'd like to hear about that. I didn't. God did it. We've got a ton of things to talk about. Back in the house, with the suitcases deposited on the living room floor, Ari put an arm around Miriam. When's the wedding, darling? How about tomorrow? She replied ecstatically. That's a bit soon, laughed Ken. Lots of details. Tomorrow you get your marriage license, as Marty and Sarah Berg, unfortunately, but one day that'll get straightened out. We planned the wedding for Saturday, if that's okay. That's 4 days from now. It allows time for some other guests to fly in. Other guests? Said Ari and Miriam in unison, looking at each other questioningly. Who'd you invite? Ari asked his bride-to-be. She shrugged and looked questioningly at Ken and Carla. There'll be a few, said Ken cryptically. Maybe even a surprise or two. Now, said Carla firmly, taking charge, while Ken helps get your bags into your rooms, I'll fix a quick supper. We can talk a bit, and then I know you two must be wiped out and want to get to bed early. You could probably sleep around the clock, so try to stay awake until I put something on the table, okay?